Mario Kart games normally have 4 Nitro Cups: Mushroom, Flower, Star, and Special. And in this video I will be ranking each Nitro Cup within their category. So we will rank every Mushroom Cup, then Flower, then Star, then Special. Quick disclaimer, this is actually a compilation of 4 videos I have already made, so if you would like to watch those individually, they will be in the same playlist as this video. And also this will not include the Lightning Cup from Mario Kart Super Circuit. That game actually has 5 Nitro Cups, and that Lightning Cup is the only one that's not a Retro Cup, because it's usually a Retro Cup in other games, so that one will not be included in this video. But other than that, sit back, relax, and let's rank every Nitro Cup in Mario Kart. This should be no surprise whatsoever. Super Mario Kart has the worst track selection out of any game, and its Mushroom Cup is no different. Mario Circuit 1, Donut Plains 1, Ghost Valley 1, and Bowser Castle 1 are all simple versions of its track theme and don't really offer any excitement for me. And then you throw Mario Circuit 2 as the last track in the cup, and that just rounds out the mediocrity. These aren't just awful tracks that I hate playing, but they're pretty boring and uninteresting. So this was an easy choice. So even though this is second to last, there's a noticeable bump in quality from Super Mario Kart. For starters, there's not 2 versions of the same track, but this is actually a solid cup that I enjoy playing. Peach Circuit is a very basic starter course, but it gets the job done. Shy Guy Beach is actually my most underrated track in this game, mostly because I love beach tracks, but the music and vibes are great. Riverside Park is a fun little jungle track. This one was remade in 8 Deluxe and is still a good time in the original. And Bowser Castle 1 is just okay. It's pretty short and forgettable, considering this game has 3 other Bowser Castles that are better. But overall, this isn't a bad Mushroom Cup at all, just not better than the next few. Look, I love Mario Kart 7, but its Mushroom Cup is certainly nothing to write home about. Toad Circuit is by no means a bad starter track, but we've seen much better. Daisy Hills is honestly really solid. It's just kind of forgettable, but the gliding section at the end is fun. I know Cheep Cheep Lagoon always gets hated on, and I'm not saying it's a good course or anything. It's too short and too boring, but there's just something about jumping in the lagoon in the beginning that I enjoy. Again, it's average at best, but I do think it's a little underrated. Shy Guy Bazaar is probably the best track here. The theming, music, and layout makes this a unique choice for a Mushroom Cup, but definitely a welcomed one. It brings this cup up from average to slightly above average, but still, Mario Kart 7's Mushroom Cup is just okay. This has got to be one of the most lopsided cups you will ever see. DS starts out with one of the most boring courses ever in Mario Kart in Figure 8 Circuit. It's wide, it's unnecessarily long, and it's just flat out bad. This is the Mario Kart equivalent of watching paint dry. And even though I love Yoshi, Yoshi Falls is not much better. Now it does have a couple boost pads, a couple waterfalls, and is significantly shorter than Figure 8 Circuit, but it's still not good. But the last 2 tracks is what saves this cup, because they're actually pretty good. I already mentioned how much I love beach tracks, and Cheep Cheep Beach is no exception. It's not the best beach course or anything, but I like it a lot and think it's an underrated DS track. Luigi's Mansion though is not underrated because everybody seems to love this course, and deservedly so. You get to drive through Luigi's Mansion from the GameCube game in the backyard while avoiding some trees. To be honest, I do think this is slightly overrated, since you only drive through the actual mansion for like 10 seconds, and the rest of the time it's mud, but it's still a cool track. Overall, DS's Mushroom Cup was decent, but now we're getting into some good ones. So I was a little surprised to see Mario Kart 8 this low, but I just couldn't put it above the next 3. With that being said, this is a good Mushroom Cup. Mario Kart Stadium is arguably the best starter course, with its satisfying turns and atmosphere, and it welcomes you into the game very well. Water Park is the low light here. I mean, it's a water park I guess, but it's just boring. I thought there would be a water slide or maybe a wave pool or something, but no, you're pretty much just driving through water. Also, how lame of a name is that? Sweet Sweet Canyon is one that I didn't particularly care for at first, but now I can say that it's a solid course for sure. The aesthetics are pretty cool, and it's actually got a little bit of difficulty for a Mushroom Cup track, plus the donut shortcut at the end is pretty neat. Thwomp Ruins is no doubt the best track here. It looks fantastic, there's obviously lots of thwomps to avoid, and even a big wheel thing. It really has everything you want in a course, and it rounds out the cup nicely. But yeah, Mario Kart 8's Mushroom Cup is pretty good in my opinion, but these next 3 are even better. I was actually pretty surprised when I made this list to see Mario Kart 64 this high, but I just couldn't bring myself to put it lower. Luigi Raceway is honestly one of the better starter tracks in my opinion. I just like the look and feel of racing on it, and the tunnel is a nice change of scenery. Yes, Moo Moo Farm is essentially just a worse version of Moo Moo Meadows, but I still think it's pretty decent. Sure, the moles can be annoying, but the music and overall hecticness make up for it. Koopa Troopa Beach is actually one of my favorite beach tracks. Its music is fantastic, the vibes couldn't be more chill, and that waterfall shortcut is very satisfying when you pull it off. It's one of the best tracks in the game, honestly. And finally, we have Calamari Desert. By far the best desert track ever. Calamari Desert offers amazing music, great aesthetics, and trains. Need I say more? But yeah, the trains actually provide a little bit of strategy, since there's a lot of moments where you'll have to decide if you think it's worth it to try to beat the train. I always forget how good Mario Kart 64's Mushroom Cup is, because I definitely didn't expect it to be in the top 3, but it deserves it. One thing about Double Dash that has always impressed me is how consistent the tracks are. I can genuinely say that there's not a bad track in this game, and the Mushroom Cup is no exception. This version of Luigi Circuit is probably the best starter track we've ever seen, mostly due to the unique design that allows you to drive right into the other racers going the opposite way. This combined with plenty of boost pads and a couple solid turns makes for a good track. And a great beginning one. Okay, I'm just now realizing how many Mushroom Cups at beach tracks, but hey, I'm not complaining. Peach Beach is not the best one, but it's still a good time. The constantly rising tide makes things a little more interesting, as well as having to avoid the cataquacks from Super Mario Sunshine, or else they'll throw you up in the air. There's also a pipe detour that is actually slower, but always gives you a double item box, and you can even see Daisy Cruiser from the beach. So actually, the more I think about it, the better Peach Beach gets. Okay, so Baby Park. It's probably the most polarizing track ever, with some people absolutely loving it, and some absolutely despising it. I'm actually somewhere in the middle, but closer to loving than hating it. I know it's just an oval, but the special items in this game, the hectic music, and it being 7 laps actually makes it unique and pretty fun. So when I first played Dry Desert, I didn't like it at all, but it's actually kind of growing on me. The Sand Twister and Sand Pit make for some very unique hazards, and I actually like the music as well. Is it one of the better tracks in this game? Absolutely not, but it's actually pretty okay. So Double Dash doesn't really have a heavy hitter in its Mushroom Cup, which is why it was kind of hard to put it all the way up at number 2, but I just couldn't deny its remarkable consistency. But it's still not number 1, because that spot goes to a much better cup in my eyes. This should surprise absolutely no one. The game with the best Nitro tracks has the best Mushroom Cup, and it really wasn't even close either. Luigi Circuit is by far the worst track here, as it's a pretty basic beginning course, but it's not bad like some people think. Sure, 2/3 of it are, but the ending with the pipe shortcut and curve with all the boost pads is pretty solid. Like I mentioned earlier, Moo Moo Meadows is the better version of Moo Moo Farm, and one big reason is cows. There's actually cows on a track with Moo in its name, and they even walk on the road. But the music is great as well, and overall it's just a chill race. So far this cup hasn't been anything spectacular, just okay really. But now we have the 2 best Mushroom Cup tracks ever back to back, starting with Mushroom Gorge. This track needs no introduction anymore. It has bouncy mushrooms, it has awesome music, it has a super fun shortcut that I still can't do consistently, but that's okay because this track is an absolute blast and is my favorite Mushroom Cup track ever. And then immediately after, we have Toad's Factory, probably the biggest snub in the Booster Course Pass. This track is the most wild Mushroom Cup course ever. Conveyor belts, boost pads, boxes, mud, even tractors. And I know I mention music a lot, but come on, this song absolutely slaps. Toad's Factory is an amazing course, and the fact that it's a Mushroom Cup course is still mind-blowing to this day, but that's a big reason why Mario Kart Wii has the best Mushroom Cup in all of Mario Kart. Pretty much a foregone conclusion at this point that Super Mario Kart is going to be dead last in every one of these rankings, and this isn't me being mean, it's just the truth. The tracks here aren't good. Choco Island 1, Ghost Valley 2, Donut Plains 2, Bowser Castle 2, and Mario Circuit 3 is the lineup, and the only non-repeat here is Choco Island, which is just depressing. That doesn't mean these tracks can't be fun or enjoyable, but they just can't compare to any of the Flower Cups from the next 7 games. Super Circuit is definitely a step up from Super Mario Kart, but still nothing to write home about. Mario Circuit, Boo Lake, Cheese Land, and Bowser Castle 2 are the 4 tracks, with Cheese Land really being the only one I would say interests me. Who wouldn't love racing on cheese with mice on the track everywhere? As for the other 3, they aren't terrible, but I feel nothing when playing them, which brings this Flower Cup all the way down to 7th place. Okay, so I may turn some heads with this one, but I'm gonna put Mario Kart 8 in 6th place. I know, I was surprised too, but the more I looked at it, the more I was kind of underwhelmed. Now don't get me wrong, this is absolutely a tier above Super Circuit, and is still pretty solid, but I just like the other ones better. Toad Harbor and Shy Guy Falls are both tracks I really like, but Mario Circuit and Twisted Mansion are tracks I just kind of tolerate, which means half of this cup is not good to me. Mario Circuit is a cool concept with the anti-gravity, but it's kind of the definition of underwhelming since it really doesn't feel that different. And Twisted Mansion just has no personality. Like, yes, it's a spooky mansion, but the only thing I remember is it being randomly flooded for some reason. It was a tough decision to put such a good Mario Kart game's Flower Cup this low, but I had to do it. Honestly, much higher than I thought it would be. I'm certainly not a huge Mario Kart 64 defender, but it has some solid tracks, and the Flower Cup is no different. Toad's Turnpike is the best here due to its combination of difficulty and fun with having to avoid traffic. Frappe Snowland isn't the greatest winter course ever, but I think it's fun and I love the music as well. Choco Mountain is one I've never really liked, but I don't hate it either, and I can see why people like it. And Mario Raceway is basically just Mario Circuit, but it's not too shabby. I like the layout, and the part at the end is really fun when you have mushrooms. It may seem kinda crazy to put this over 8, but I just think they have a little more charm and personality, but they are really close, and I'd have no problem with switching them. Right in the middle is appropriate for Mario Kart 7, because that's probably where I'd put the game as a whole, and as Flower Cup is no different. Woohoo Loop is a fun section course based on Woohoo Island from Wii Sports Resort, and even if you've never played that game, this is still an enjoyable time. This version of Mario Circuit is one of my favorites since it has Peach's Castle, but other than that, it's still not anything spectacular, and is probably the worst track here. Music Park is one of the best tracks in the game, and probably the whole series. You drive on instruments that actually play music, and it's just a grand old time. I never see that much love for Rock Mountain, even though it's really fun to race on. More specifically, the part where you glide off the mountain, and the ending is pretty cool too. I don't think people would mention this cup much when thinking of the best Flower Cups, but it's honestly a really good one in my opinion. Number 3 is going to be Mario Kart DS, and I'll be honest, it doesn't start off the greatest with Desert Hills, which isn't terrible, but it's obviously a desert course, and those just aren't that great. But after that, it is smooth sailing because next is Delfino Square, which is like a top 5 track in the game. It's a cute little town with an outstanding layout, music, and the drawbridge is always a blast. And then we have a track that needs no introduction, Waluigi Pinball. You should know the deal by now, you're in a pinball machine, amazing music, special sound effects, it's awesome. But the cup isn't over yet, cause last but not least is Shroom Ridge, a very odd one to follow Waluigi Pinball since it's much more tame. It's just a road with cars, but even though it's not near as exciting, it's still a good track cause it has nice relaxing vibes, and there's still cars to avoid, which give it some needed difficulty. So even though Desert Hills and Shroom Ridge aren't anything revolutionary, Delfino Square and Waluigi Pinball more than make up for it and catapult this cup all the way into the top 3. I really did debate putting Double Dash at number 1, but it just got beat out. But obviously this is still an amazing Flower Cup, starting with Mushroom Bridge, which is an instant classic. Avoiding cars, taking the pipe detour, and of course driving on the bridge all make for a good time, and I won't even mention that banger of a song. Double Dash's Mario Circuit is certainly, without a shadow of a doubt, a Mario Circuit. It's a fine track, I don't have anything against it, it's just kinda there though. Now Daisy Cruiser is what I want to see. If you know me and have been watching my videos for a while, you know I absolutely love this track, and in fact this is my favorite Double Dash course. I just really love beach and summer themed courses, and this is the best one ever, so obviously I adore Daisy Cruiser. And then this cup is rounded out with another amazing track in Waluigi Stadium. It's got all kinds of obstacles and tight turns, and it just has this wacky fun vibe to it, and it just really captures what you'd expect Mario Kart to be. So I think we can all agree that Double Dash has a fantastic flower cup, and it deserves to be this high. But there's still one more that's better. Whenever Mario Kart Wii is number 1 on a track ranking, you should not be surprised at all. It has the best Nitro track selection ever, and that's why it was number 1 on the Mushroom Cup video as well. But of course, Wii's Flower Cup has to start off with another Mario circuit. It's fine, I guess. The music is good. There's a chain chomp, but it's also too short, so it's just alright. Now, Coconut Mall, on the other hand, is a revolutionary course, and one that quite a few people will still say is the best track in Mario Kart history. Now, I wouldn't go quite that far, but it is an amazing idea for a track that was executed beautifully in this game and will always be incredible. I mean, it's a mall, should I even say more? And if you are familiar with my videos, you will know that DK Summit is actually my favorite track of all time. Now, a little bit of that is because of nostalgia, but come on, DK Summit is fantastic. I also love winter tracks, and this has amazing winter vibes to it, along with having snowboarding Shy Guys, of course. And then you have Wario's Gold Mine, which seems to be a little more controversial than the last two, but a lot of people still love this one, and I would have to agree. Yes, it is a little more difficult than I'd like, and the narrow road combined with no guardrails and Wii's unfair physics means you can be bumped off by racers very easily. But despite all that, it's still a really fun track, and a great theme for one too. You guys should know the drill by now. Super Mario Kart is going to be dead last like always, but there is at least a little variety in this one. Koopa Beach 1, Choco Island 2, Vanilla Lake 1, Bowser Castle 3, and Mario Circuit 4 is the lineup, so there's at least 2 original tracks in this one, but Vanilla Lake 1 is a pretty terrible course, so that kind of nullifies it. So yeah, once again a lackluster cut from Super Mario Kart, but at least the other 7 are at least solid. Super Circuit comes in at number 7, and a big reason is it starts with Snowland, which gives me a headache to play, so I kinda hate it. Now, Ribbon Road is arguably the best course in the whole game, and is a ton of fun with all the jumping you can do, but then we're back to a bad track in Yoshi Desert, which is not fun in any way, and the cup is wrapped up with Bowser Castle 3, which is actually a solid Bowser Castle, and I like it a lot in Mario Kart Wii. But overall, this cup is hard carried by Ribbon Road, which is just not enough for me to put it any higher. Mario Kart 64 is going to land at number 6, and this one is a bit underwhelming for a Star Cup. Wario Stadium is a pretty terrible track in my opinion. It's extremely long, boring, and just feels like a chore to play. It's like Rainbow Road, but at least that has really good music and stuff to look at. I actually like Sherbet Land though, as it's my most underrated track for this game, and I have a video for that if you're interested, but just because I think it's underrated doesn't mean that I think it's great, because it's really not, it's just decent. Royal Raceway really only has one thing going for it, and that of course is being able to drive up to Peach's Castle from Super Mario 64. I wouldn't say it's bad, but it's nothing special, and certain parts of the course can be very frustrating due to this game's terrible physics. But at least Bowser's Castle is here, because it is arguably the best course in the game, and is the only reason this cup isn't below Super Circuit. For a Bowser's Castle made in 1996, this is really good. A good amount of obstacles, challenging but still fun turns, and just overall good Bowser Castle vibes. But yeah, the Star Cup isn't great. Mario Kart 7 Star Cup is kind of underwhelming as well, but is much better than 64's. Piranha Plant Slide is one of my favorites in this game. It's a great concept, and while it's not exactly a classic like Coconut Mall or DK Mountain, you know, tracks that come to mind when you think of playing Mario Kart, but I still like it a lot. Wario Shipyard is kind of the same thing for me. Cool idea, solid track, but it just feels like there's something missing in it. I think one reason is the music is just kind of forgettable. Now, Neo Bowser City is one that I have never cared for. It's not terrible, but I never look forward to it. I just don't care for the futuristic city theme. It feels out of place in a Mario Kart. And the layout is not great either. Plus there's those rain puddles at the end that make you spin out, and those are just annoying, so yeah, not a fan of this one. But this cup ends on a good note with Maku Woohoo, which is a lot like Woohoo Loop since it's also on Woohoo Island. This course is pretty good, the gliding section at the end is really fun, and the sunset looks beautiful, but I do like Woohoo Loop a little bit better. Not super sure why, to be honest, but I still like this one a lot. So this Star Cup is certainly not anything groundbreaking, but it's solid and it's in a whole nother tier when compared to Mario Kart 64, but it's at 5 for a reason, and that's because these next 4 are all fantastic. DS comes in at number 4, which is very surprising to me because I absolutely love this Star Cup, which should tell you how incredible the top 3 Star Cups are, but we'll get to those next. DK Pass is an incredibly underrated winter track and is one of my favorites in DS. The music, snow, and snowballs make for a fun time, and it just gives me lots of nostalgia and warm feelings when I play it. Tick Tock Clock is a very unique one based on the level in Mario 64, and it's also just a fun track even if you have never played Mario 64. You're basically inside of a clock and you get to race on gears and avoid giant clock hands. It's a great concept and was executed very well. Interestingly, DS's Mario Circuit is actually in its Star Cup instead of the usual Flower Cup, which is why this is not in the top 3. Now don't get me wrong, this Mario Circuit is pretty solid, but it's still nothing special and is nothing compared to the other 3 courses in this cup. Airship Fortress is the perfect ending to a Star Cup, and a lot of people think this is the best track in the game. I wouldn't say it's the best, but it's probably top 3, and the theme and obstacles are why. It's based on the airships from Mario Bros. 3 and has you avoiding things like bullet bills, moles, and even lasers. Plus you get shot out of a cannon, which is always a nice touch. But yeah, this cup is pretty great, but that should tell you how good the next 3 are. Double Dash has a really good Star Cup, and I feel bad I couldn't put it higher, but the fact that it starts out with Sherbet Land is not great. The cool thing about Double Dash is that it doesn't have any bad tracks in my opinion, but Sherbet Land is not a good track, mostly due to how annoying it is to play with the slipperiness. The music and aesthetics are great, but the gameplay just leaves a lot to be desired. Thankfully, Mushroom City is actually a good track. It's a traffic track, but it's a unique one because it has so many different paths and detours you can take, and that helps keep the track refreshing to play every time. And of course there's cars to avoid for some difficulty. If you know me, then you know I love Yoshi Circuit, specifically the original version, because this one actually has both shortcuts in it. But yeah, you know the drill with this one by now. It's shaped like Yoshi, has great shortcuts, and is just really fun to play. And finally we have a fan favorite in DK Mountain. Now I will say I don't like this one quite as much as a lot of people, but it's still a great course. You get shot out of a cannon onto the top of a mountain and hectically make your way down while avoiding boulders and of course the other racers. The shortcut at the end can be a little frustrating to do, especially if you're not used to it, but other than that, this track is a blast. And we have finally seen it happen. After 3 ranking videos, Mario Kart Wii is not number 1, which is a little surprising because I kind of thought it would be number 1 for all the Nitro Cups, but the more I looked at it, the more I knew I had to put it at 2 instead this time. But just because it's not number 1 doesn't mean it isn't great. So let's see what tracks this Star Cup has, and it's Daisy Circuit. Yeah, not the best start. Okay, so Daisy Circuit isn't terrible or anything, it's just so average. You'd think with the fun and creative tracks this game is filled with that the Star Cup would start out more exciting, but no, we get Daisy Circuit. But let's move on to an amazing track in Koopa Cape, which I have always loved, specifically the underwater section. It still impresses me to this day, and the part where you ride in the stream is cool too. Just an incredibly enjoyable course. And then we follow that up with another amazing one in Maple Tree Way. This one has you driving on trees, being shot out of a cannon, avoiding wigglers, and it just has an overall cozy vibe to it. I don't think I've heard anyone ever say they don't like Maple Tree Way. Grumble Volcano isn't as good as the last 2, but it still is an exciting race. I mean, you're in a volcano. The really neat part is that certain pieces of the course will fall into the lava as the race progresses, making each lap a little more challenging. It's a lot less peaceful than Maple Tree Way, but it's a nice change of pace and a great way to end this Star Cup. So Wii has finally been dethroned for once, so that means we have a new number 1, Mario Kart 8. I told you guys in the Flower Cup ranking that this game would redeem itself for its underwhelming Flower Cup, and it did exactly that. We start out with one of my personal favorites in Sunshine Airport, which I feel is kind of a sequel to Coconut Mall. You're driving through an airport, through planes, and even with the planes at one point. I do kind of wish you were inside the airport itself a little more, but it's still an amazing course. Dolphin Shoals is no slouch either, and this is one of the best underwater tracks in my opinion. The best part has to be the music because it changes depending on when you're underwater versus when you're not. And when you emerge from the underwater cave and that saxophone hits you, man, it's amazing. Electrodrome is my least favorite track here, but it's still pretty good. All the lights and loud music make it feel like you're finally at one of those parties you could never get invited to. The layout itself isn't anything crazy, but the atmosphere makes up for it and then some. And finally, we have the best track in 8, in my opinion, Mount Wario, which is nothing short of a grand adventure. You start out in a huge helicopter thing, and off you go down an enormous mountain, through a cave, a dam, a forest, and eventually down a ski slope until you're finally at the finish line. And this of course is a sectioned track, thankfully, or it would take so long. But yeah, it's amazing and I have loved it from the first time I ever played it. And it's a big reason why I had no other choice but to put Mario Kart 8 at number 1. Once again, no surprise that Super Mario Kart is coming in dead last. The first 4 tracks in the cup are all variations, and also Vanilla Lake 2 is a horrible course. But the last one just happens to be the first ever Rainbow Road, and while this version certainly isn't my favorite, it's still the most unique track in this game, and the only one that there's one of, but it's still not nearly enough to save Super Mario Kart from being dead last once again. Not gonna lie, Mario Kart 64 Special Cup is kind of underwhelming. DK's Jungle Parkway is a pretty solid one in my opinion. I really enjoy the theme and atmosphere, and that jump over the river is cool too. Yoshi Valley is an extremely unique track in the Mario Kart franchise. There is an alarming number of different paths to take to get to the end, but at the same time you don't know what place you're in until the end of the race, which is kind of neat but can also be annoying. And speaking of annoying, have you ever fell off the track in this one? It takes an unbelievable amount of time to get back. That combined with this game's hard to control physics, and that makes this track more annoying than anything for me. Personally, I think Banshee Boardwalk is the epitome of average. It's perfectly fine, I have nothing against it, but it's nothing that excites me either. I don't care for the atmosphere and the layout is pretty uninteresting. But speaking of atmosphere, Mario Kart 64's Rainbow Road has one of the best out there. Sadly, this is really the only good part of the course though, because this Rainbow Road is known for being extremely long and boring. The race will last an astounding 6 minutes, and that's if you don't play on 50cc. That combined with all the guardrails and super simple layout makes this an underwhelming one. Mario Kart Super Circuit Special Cup is definitely not my favorite, but it's just slightly better than 64's. Lakeside Park is extremely similar to Riverside Park, as you can imagine, but this time there's a volcano that shoots lava at you, so that's pretty cool. Or hot, I guess. Broken Pier is similar to Boo Lake. Personally, I prefer Boo Lake, even though there isn't a lake, but Broken Pier is a perfectly fine ghost course. Bowser Castle 4 is like the most average Bowser Castle ever. Nothing really wrong with it, it's just okay, and I personally prefer the third one over this by a wide margin. And of course we have Rainbow Road. This is an interesting one for sure because of the jump pads at the ends of the road itself. Seems a little out of place on a Rainbow Road, but they're actually a lot of fun. You can do some pretty sick jumps once you get the hang of these things, and I would put this Rainbow Road above Mario Kart 64's because it's just more fun, and that's ultimately why it's above it on the list. Hate to put 7 this low because it's a good special cup, but just like the Star Cup video, the top 4 are all really good, so I just couldn't put this over them. DK Jungle is a fun Donkey Kong track. You'll race through the jungle, through a temple, and avoid some frogs because why not? If you know me, you know I think Rosalina's Ice World is underrated, but that doesn't mean I think it's really good or anything, just better than what most people say. It's a solid track and I love the music and aesthetics of it. This version of Bowser's Castle is one of the most forgotten ones, and I can see why because it's not a top tier one like the other versions we'll see later. But it's not bad by any means, it's just kind of an average 3D Bowser's Castle. The only thing that really stands out is the fact that there is an underwater section, which feels out of place, but yeah, this is just an okay rendition of Bowser's Castle. But we completely flip that with what is arguably the best Rainbow Road ever. I've talked about this one so many times on my channel, but this Rainbow Road is just incredible. So many things to see and drive on, you kind of forget you're in a race because it feels more like sightseeing. I really want to put 7 higher on the list due to how amazing this track is, but the other tracks in the cup just weren't good enough. And this is a special cup ranking, not a Rainbow Road ranking. So 7 is just gonna stay down here. Mario Kart 8 is coming in at number 4, and while this cup is pretty good, it's a bit of a mixed bag for me. Cloud Top Cruise is one of my favorites in the whole game. Obviously you're in the clouds and you even drive through some storm clouds. It's kind of like Sky Garden but on steroids. But next is Bone Dry Dunes, which might be my least favorite Nitro track. I wouldn't say it's terrible or anything, but it just feels kind of depressing with the colors and overall atmosphere. But I did used to hate it, and now I tolerate it, so I guess there's that. This rendition of Bowser's Castle is one of my favorites though, and feels similar to the Wii's version, which is the best in my opinion. It's even got a big mechanical Bowser, which certainly isn't original, but still a welcomed addition. But yeah, this is a great Bowser's Castle and definitely helps out this special cup because the next track is a bit disappointing. And while it is disappointing, I'm not going to say Mario Kart 8's Rainbow Road is bad, it's just different than what I'm used to and what I want a Rainbow Road to be, which is a freaking rainbow. This version is space station themed, which kind of makes sense because this track is always in space, but the road itself doesn't really look like a rainbow. It looks more like a man-made road. Plus the layout is not all that interesting. I mean, the space station part is okay I guess, but nothing mind-blowing. So this special cup is overall good, but it's hard carried by Cloud Top Cruise and Bowser's Castle, so that's ultimately why it's not in the top 3. Number 3 is Mario Kart DS, and this is an all-around good special cup. Wario Stadium is an underrated track in my opinion. It's not quite as good as Waluigi Stadium, as it's a little more basic, but still a lot of fun. Peach Gardens is actually a really creative concept. Driving in Peach's yard and avoiding the hedges and chain chomps makes for an interesting track for sure, and it's one of my favorite DS tracks in general. DS Bowser's Castle is a pretty average one I'd say. It's certainly not bad like some of the 2D ones, but not elite like Double Dash or Wii. It has the spinning cylinder and that one shortcut you'll probably think of, but that's all there really is to distinguish it. So it's solid but not anything groundbreaking. And honestly I could say the same thing about Rainbow Road. The only thing that is different about the DS version is the loops, which are unique no doubt, but other than that this Rainbow Road is average as it gets. It's still a very good track overall, but I did put it in the middle of my Rainbow Road ranking for a reason. It was unbelievably hard to choose between number 1 and number 2, but I did decide to put Double Dash here at 2. Wario Coliseum is one of the more unique tracks in the series. It's essentially a big cage and it's only 2 laps, which is a really good thing because it's a long course. It's pretty fun as well though and has a cool theme. If you love dinosaurs then you'll love Dino Dino Jungle, because well, it has dinosaurs. It also has some geysers, tough turns, and fun music. So it's an all-around solid track in my opinion. I can't decide if this Bowser's Castle is the second or third best in the series, but either way it's up there and it's a blast. It's got a dark atmosphere, challenging sections, and it was the first to have a big mechanical Bowser, so it should get some points for that. So even though it's not the best, it's still awesome and deserves all the praise it gets. Double Dash's Rainbow Road is not one I grew up playing, but it's certainly one of my favorites now as an adult. This one really makes you feel like you're racing in space and it's the last track of the game. The music makes it feel like this is the end of a long, great adventure, and it's just a magical feeling. And the track itself is great too. It can be a little frustrating for sure, but overall an incredible experience and one of my favorite Rainbow Roads. It was super close, but Wii is going to be back at the number 1 spot, and obviously this special cup is pretty fantastic. Dry Ruins is a desert track, but unlike most desert tracks, this one is actually good. Mostly because of the inside part where the sand is filling up more and more throughout the race, but overall it's just a fun track to race on. Moonview Highway is a traffic track, but this one is possibly the most fun and chaotic one we've seen. Mostly because the cars in this one can be super unpredictable and you are never safe from being hit. And that includes bomb cars, which of course will blow up if you touch them. That combined with the 10,000 boost pads on the course makes this race insane, but a really fun time. But now we get into the meat and potatoes of this cup, because this is the best Bowser Castle of all time in my opinion. From the very beginning when you fly into the castle, it is an adventure. The moving floor, the giant Bowser shooting fireballs, the lava geysers, so many cool obstacles and hazards. It's really just everything I like about Bowser's Castle all wrapped up into one. And it gets even better with the widely loved Wii Rainbow Road. This is an amazing track and has a great argument for being the best Rainbow Road. I think if you want a more traditional race, then this is the best, but if you like an overall experience, then the 3DS one is the best. Either way, this Rainbow Road is a fantastic course, and is one of the best in the entire Mario Kart franchise, and a big reason why Wii comes in at number 1. This combined with Wii having the best Bowser's Castle, and then having 2 other really good tracks as well, gave me no other choice than to give yet another first place to Mario Kart Wii. Guys, if you have made it all the way to the end of this compilation, thank you so much for watching and supporting this channel. This is going to end up being over 30 minutes long, which I do not post videos this long like ever, so thank you so much for watching. Please let me know in the comments if you would like to see the retro tracks ranked. I know there's not near as many of them as there are nitro tracks, but let me know if you'd be interested in seeing that anyway. And if you have any other kind of video ideas you want me to do, just let me know in the comments and I'll always consider them. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching this video and supporting the channel, and have a great day.